On today's show, gonna be talking about the Clipper culture. At one point, the Clippers culture was all negative, all bad, and nothing good could be said about it. But do the Clippers have a culture, a positive one? And joining me in this episode is someone who was covering the team, but also Clipper Nation's very own. Gonna be talking about the Clipper culture on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA and going into my 19th season as a Clipper fan this fall. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dime Dropper Pod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more Clipper content. And in this episode, the words culture, team culture are thrown around a lot in the NBA discourse these days. And I wanted to talk about if the Clippers have a culture. And I thought bringing somebody who was a newer member of the fan base, but also had a lens of being around the team, being at Media Day, covering some of the playoff games, and even more importantly, a friend, Kelli Johnson from Fox 11, LA's very own Fox branch, is here to talk Clipper basketball. Kelli, first, I think you might be the first female guest on my tenure
Oh,
as Locked On host.
it's an honor and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's get right into it now. So you obviously, for those that don't know, Kelli and I actually met when she interviewed me as part of the Intuit Dome's groundbreaking. So before we get into anything, and I think it kind of ties into what we're going to talk about, the Intuit Dome. You met me and several other Clipper fans when you're doing that story for the Intuit Dome, and now when we drive by the place, it is coming together. And how does it feel to have overseen that whole thing? And you obviously were part of the tour with the players, right?
Right. And it's exciting. And that was interview. I couldn't say no. I interviewed probably like 12 people. I was like, hey, like, does anyone want to interview me about this groundbreaking? And I was like, there's no way. And I got like so many responses. And that just goes to show how passionate Clipper fans are. But I just couldn't say no. So I interviewed a ton of people, and the people I wasn't able to Zoom, I would just ask them some questions via DM or via email. Everyone is so passionate about this team. And that was really my introduction to Clipper culture. And people really want to talk about Clipper Nation. And I just really resonated with the fans. I really appreciated how, willing people were to talk about the team and how passionate they were. And ever since then, I was like, I need people to see this is how passionate this fan base is. I thought everyone was so kind. Everyone was on time for their Zoom interview. So that was really my first introduction to Clipper Nation.
So you were already a Clipper fan though before that interview, right?
So what's funny is I always tell this story is like me. I feel like I came along with PG and Kawhi like that summer we all came back to LA. But yes, I mean I remember. I would say I decided I was going to go the Clippers route maybe a few months before then. I was like, okay, this is the way I'm going to go. And it's funny because before the season even started, it was before the 2019 season, and the Clippers and the Lakers, they rolled out their intro videos before the season. And I really resonated with the Clippers video. They had like Trez and Pat Bev. And I was like, ooh, the energy. I love this team. And it was a very different energy. The Lakers, they went the Hollywood route, which they can do. But I was like, no, I kind of like this like dog mentality that the Clippers have.
So I guess that leads us right in perfectly to the culture thing. So, growing up, and I'm sure you've heard that the Clipper culture back in the day was filled with bad luck,
Mhm.
injuries, poor ownership, a bad
Mhm.
person owning the team. And the culture around the Clippers is a losing culture. That
Mhm.
I don't know when that series comes out on FX about the Clippers,
Oh,
but
yes.
I remember people making jokes because the Lakers have that show Winning Time that, oh, they're gonna call this losing time. But I think that is kind of the overlying theme of what the Clippers were in the Donald Sterling era. You coming from, growing up in a different state and then moving to LA and kind of adopting the Clippers in this new era. What's the culture? You mentioned just now the not flash, not Hollywood. If you were to try to sell someone to be a Clipper fan, what would you say about the team and the culture that they, radiate, so to speak, these days?
That's something I've been thinking about a lot. And, we talk about the new arena opening. We can't wait for Intuit Dome. If you would have asked me this question maybe a year ago, I would have said, oh, we don't have a culture just yet. We need to wait until this new arena opens. But the way I would sell it is it's almost like an underground fan base. And it's like you don't really know much about it unless you're in it. I remember covering the playoffs. I ran into someone that, we're about the same age. We grew up in the same area. And, she works for a Phoenix station. And she's like, you're the only Clippers fan I know. And, she's like, it's just like this curiosity that people, they really don't think that Clippers have fans, and they go to the game, they see an arena filled tens of thousands of fans, and then they see it. So it's really something that a lot of people don't know about until they're in it, which I think is really cool. I think that's an element to it. It's just not as loud maybe as some of the other fan bases, but it's definitely there.
So now that you're in it, what did you, take from it now that you've had a couple of years of being a Clipper fan under your belt? And this could be, with the team and with the fan base. What do you notice about like what makes the Clippers unique besides the fact that of course we are the second, you know, attraction in our city in terms of basketball, but maybe that can tie into, what the culture is about the team.
I would say that it's just very realistic. I don't want to say the Clippers almost represent the real LA. Like, we always talk about the Lakers being more Hollywood. And I do cover both teams. I'm very
Right.
fortunate that I'm able to do so. But I remember the playoffs and just outside of the crypto.com arena. And, the Clipper fans were way more willing to talk to me about the team and their playoff hopes as opposed to Laker fans. And it was just a very different atmosphere. But, that goes back to Clipper fans just being so passionate, really wanting to get their passion out there and get that exposure for the team. It's just very different. I think people, and it's not just people from LA. It was really interesting. I know like on Twitter, there's like a fan base in Australia, and every now and then you run into like a fan from like New York or something like that, which I think is really unique. And, it's coming. What exactly the definition of Clipper culture is, I think we're getting there. But like I said, it's kind of like an underground thing. You don't know too much about it until you're in it. But passion is the word that comes to mind. Pride, loyalty. I think there's something very special about rooting for a team that has yet to win a championship. I think that takes a different type of just love for your team. And I really admire and respect it.
Yeah, I think, based off what you're saying, it feels more like the culture of the team is still kind of forming because, Steve
Right.
Ballmer, this is going to be his 10th season as our owner. So finally he's hitting that kind of decade mark. But in terms of the fans, there really is a culture. There really is. There's a passion. There's this. We are the underdog. I mean, that's just the
Mhm.
fact. We always have been. No matter how much we're favored starting a season or whatnot, there is still a skepticism from everyone, not just Laker fans, from everyone. Like the Clippers are
Yes.
really a championship contender. Like Clippers are never going to win a championship. So to
Mhm.
me, we're always going to be that underdog. And I do think that the fans not only have a pride and passion, but as you said, the main words there are loyalty. I think Clipper fans, I always say this on the podcast, best fans in the association is very subjective. I don't know who I'd even say that, but most loyal fans in the association, I don't think it's a contest because like
Right.
what you've been saying is it's not just about that we've been a losing franchise for all these years and all that. And even the years that we've been a winning franchise, we've had heartbreak after heartbreak.
Yeah.
It's that on top of all those things I just said, we are second class citizens in the city. You do, and we've had conversations about this like off camera and stuff about Clipper players going to other pro sporting events in LA and getting booed. That all
To my
comes with
heart.
this. Going,
Yes.
and I keep, it's funny on Twitter. I see all the girls saying, "Oh, this guy will throw this pickup line at me like you're pretty for a Clipper fan, or that's a nice shirt for a Clipper fan." And so it's just those little comments. They don't seem like much in the grand scheme of things, but if you're a Charlotte Hornets fan living in Charlotte, you see a
They
guy with a
don't.
Charlotte Hornets shirt, and then you probably give him a little head nod and walk by. It's not the same.
Right.
So, but coming up, we're going to talk about what kind of culture the team kind of permeated last season, and does that align with the vision that we are going towards? Going to be getting Kelly's thoughts on the 2023 season. Get ready for that. I got to tell you a little something about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. The NFL season is in full swing. Just finished week 2 or about to finish week 2. Make sure you keep placing your bets. And you know what time it almost is. Almost time for October baseball, and my Dodgers yet again just clinched the NL West. So you already know where to go for all your betting needs. That's FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right. So, Kelly, last season of the seasons that you've been covering Fox, if I'm not mistaken, was the closest you've been to the Clippers, right? The most like access you had. Am I
Yes.
wrong on that? Okay.
No,
So,
you're correct.
yeah. So, what did you think just from, I guess let's start with what did you feel when you were at Media Day, the vibes to start the season? Because there was so much optimism around the fan base. And then by the end, it was so much pain. So, just describe to me how the emotions kind of went from the beginning to end.
Well, I'm just thankful that my station lets me do it. I'm pretty, let's say, persistent about wanting to cover the Clippers. So, I'm always grateful for the opportunity. But talking about media day, I remember just how fun it was. We had John Wall, signing shoes. We had, he was talking to Paul George and Luke Kennard, and it was just a really exciting energy. I remember asking Paul George, I'm like, hey, like, what is the one word you would use to describe going into the season? And he said, focus. And he was talking about how even when he was in Italy for his honeymoon, he really wasn't eating pasta and stuff like that. He was so focused and dedicated. And it was kind of, one of those movies where, at the beginning, it's like, let me tell you how I got here. And it would start with the clip of him going down, in that game. And, just flashing back to just, what we thought it was going to be. It's always a bit scary to me when the media is like, oh, we project the Clippers to win the championship. This is something we expect. It's like, oh no, all eyes are on us. And to me, it seems like this is a franchise that does best when people aren't necessarily paying attention.
Right.
And all eyes were on us. I mean, we had John Wall, like people hadn't seen him in years. Kawhi Leonard coming back off of his injury, wanting to see what Paul George was going to do. So yeah, all eyes were on us. And unfortunately, it did not go the way we wanted it to.
Going back to the comment about PG and the focus, one thing that us Clipper fans really, were critical of with the team was that we didn't start the season with what we thought was going to be that focus. What did you think the first half of the season when, before Kawhi was really bad? Because remember, he had that setback.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What were your thoughts in that moment when we were struggling so much? Our players weren't healthy. Did you feel like the players were not backing up what they were saying, or do you just think it was an unfortunate set of circumstances? I mean, what was your take on that from the fan perspective, not even the media perspective?
From a fan perspective, I mean, I think there's something, this about me. I always try to be optimistic, but realistic at the same time. If we're losing consistent games, if we're battling every single night and our star players aren't out there, you hope for the best. We did it the season prior, the comeback clips. There was something so special about that season. And I think we wanted to see the resurgence of that. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. It was kind of like a more sad season. And the way I kind of think about it is if you think back to your high school or college years, what was the one year that you kind of dreaded, that you went into the year, wanting to be popular or wanting to meet new people, and then it ends basically getting dumped on prom night. That's what last season felt like.
Oh man, besides the prom part, it sounds kind of like my freshman year of high school. I was very excited going into it, and by the end, I was like, man, I was counting down the days till summer.
Yeah,
But
exactly. And that's how I felt. It's just like, okay, let's just get through the season. I mean, we started the postseason with a promising look, and I think you just look at it and it's like, we're going to pull it together. Ty Lue's going to figure it out. These guys, they're going to rally and get it together. And unfortunately, we didn't see as much of that, but I think we do have the building blocks for it. I mean, having Russell Westbrook on the team, Bones Highland, I think we added some pieces. I'm excited to see what KJ Martin brings to the table, as well as Kobe Brown. Mason Plumlee is back, so I'm excited to see what we do this season.
You mentioned Russ. That's somebody who, dominated a lot of the headlines for us last season. His move was so big in terms of, the public talk about it and just the impact that it had. What did you think of the differences between the post Russ move and then the pre Russ? Like, how did it affect how much fun you had in this, watching the games, and how you felt about the team, and him being an LA guy? How did you take that his impact in Clipper? Uh, how did you take his impact coming to the Clipper team as a fan?
I think initially, I don't want to say I was just like, let's see it. I think, sometimes it's like, okay, you read the theories on social media. It's like, I will react when I see it. I need to see the first few games. We know how those first few games went. We went winless. But I remember going to the games. I tell people all the time, you have to be there in person. And it just felt so much more electric. Of course, we have Kawhi and PG. Those are undeniable superstars. But having Russ on the team, completely different atmosphere. It almost felt like every night was a playoff game. He just really brought this excitement and this electricity that I have not seen outside of the arena, other than going to like a Lakers game. And then just seeing his heart in the playoffs, him being out there, just seeing how he was in the media. And when he was a Laker, I was one of those people who defended him. I was like, I don't care what team he's on. I don't like how he's being portrayed in the media. I don't like how people are talking about him. There's a certain point where bullying just isn't okay. I didn't like it. It was really sad that he didn't even feel comfortable having his family going to the games. So I think seeing him really turn it around, and just you could tell he wanted to be there, and we needed to see that because I think Clipper Nation really needed to see a player who genuinely wanted to be there every night, was going to give his all. And I think there's some optimism going into next season with him back on the team.
Yeah, I totally concur with your point about the electricity in the building. I mean, obviously that first game against Sacramento has become famous for other reasons besides Westbrook's debut being the second highest scoring game ever. But, even the tip off to that game, it was a big game considering we were right next to the Kings in the standings, but there was a different energy, and there ended up being a different energy in all the games that we had Russ. And I think partially that's because he's an LA guy, and obviously he's a future Hall of Famer that has a fan base, a crazy stan base itself. And then obviously the people that were there for him, people that were there just to support Westbrook. You can really feel that in the building. And I'm really excited, as you are, to have that from day one. But just to finish off on last season, one of the things that I was, most happy for you in doing was that you got to be at not only were you at every single playoff game, or for the Clippers series?
Most of them, yes, the greater majority of them.
So not just that, but the fact that you got to have a very unique experience in that you were at a Clipper playoff game in the same day that you covered a Laker playoff game. So I want to know how the atmospheres differed, and also how the experience was covering NBA playoff basketball for the first time. That must have been awesome.
Well, not to get, super emotional, but I know for me covering that, Phoenix series, having grown up there,
Right.
and it was really a full circle moment. It's just like, driving from my mom's house and going down the same roads where, I went to college. And it's like, these were the days that I dreamt about. So for it to come full circle, it's like, here comes this person who really wanted to cover sports, never really got a chance. And then now here I am covering the NBA playoffs. And that was quite a moment for me, just on a personal level. That was just, I had to give myself, just be so proud of myself for that. But yes, I remember covering both games on the same day, the Lakers and of course the Clippers. That was a long day, I will say that, but it was really interesting to see just how different the setup was. I think Laker fans are more, they tend to be a little bit earlier for the games. I mean, outside crypto.com, I mean, you can't deny all the purple and gold just painted completely different. Clipper fans tend to get there it's right before the games, and we've been called out about this on national TV. We all know, but it's like, hey, people have to go to work. People are doing the best they can, and that's all right. And then the differences. I didn't necessarily love seeing people from Phoenix making the drive or the flight from Phoenix and kind of not being like half of the crowd, but I saw a lot more orange and purple than I would have liked to have seen. But that was probably the loudest that I've heard the fans in the stands in the playoffs. And, I know one thing that we've talked about, you asked me like how the energy was in Phoenix, and that to me is the loudest crowd I've ever seen. So going from like Phoenix, watching those games to the Casino Laker game, I was like, I'm like, I think they're a little bit louder in Phoenix, which was really surprising to me because a few years ago, it probably wouldn't have been that way.
Yeah, I mean, obviously LA fans have their reputation, relative to other cities about being not loud and showing up to games late and all
Mhm.
that. And I will say that some of them are true, but I do think when it comes to basketball, we are very, very passionate about the sport. I mean, having
Yeah.
two teams, having them both in the playoffs, that's when you get to see the excitement of the city and the love for basketball at an all-time high when both teams are in the playoffs. And I will say, even though I'm very excited about the Intuit Dome, that is one thing I'm kind of gonna miss is
Mhm.
is having that unique ability to see a playoff game in the same arena for two different home teams. I think that was something that I didn't get to experience the same day thing. I still haven't experienced that, but I was lucky enough in 2012 to go to Clippers Grizzlies game 4 of the playoffs one night, and then the next night I had a Lakers Nuggets game 5 ticket. And it's funny because the excitement and crowd level, like the loudness for Laker fans back then was nowhere near now, believe it or not, because they were so used to making the playoffs.
Right.
This season against Memphis, like the game you attended, I can guarantee, even though I wasn't there, that that game was louder than any Laker playoff game I've been to. I've been to 3, and none of them were too memorable. The crowd was, it was all first round. So for them, that was
Mhm.
like a regular season game
Expected.
when they had Kobe, right?
Right.
But us against Memphis, that was the first year we made the playoffs in 6 years. So it was like a game 7 type of atmosphere. And I feel like ever since then, it's been Clipper fans that have kind of become accustomed to being in the playoffs. And then Laker fans, especially when they won the championship, not here, in the bubble, they were ecstatic
Oh
to
yeah.
welcome them back home. So yeah, I hope going forward though that Clipper fans will, I don't know what it's going to take, but hopefully we can revert back to that appreciating being in the playoffs so much and have every game. I'm not saying every game be like game 6 against the Jazz, but you know, at least that kind of enthusiasm in a big playoff game. I hope we can get that back consistently. But coming up, going to be talking about this upcoming season and the future of LAC as it pertains to the culture and, of course, our odds to, I don't know, do what this upcoming season. I'm going to get Kelly's thoughts on that coming up. All right. So here we go. The last season in the Staples Center. I want to get your thoughts first on the team, how you feel we can do this upcoming season, what the goals are, and of course, the second side of the coin, and that is the last season in the Staples Center. And you can even comment on the schedule and how that has affected it, because we already know it's not looking like a very pleasant schedule for the players.
Oh man, well, where do I begin? So, I found the best way to do it is have no expectations. I know that I've seen a lot on social media that people are like, we'll be lucky if we make, the play-ins. So
That's
we'll see what happens.
a little too
You know?
negative.
Yeah, I was like, this is why I'm not on social media much because I start seeing comments and then I go down a rabbit hole. But I am going in with no expectations. I honestly feel like in the NBA especially, it's all about injuries, right? So it's like with a healthy PG and Kawhi, like that would be phenomenal. Like that's one, if anyone needs something to do this off season, let's all manifest that. Like I think that's a great start, something to begin with, something to hope for. Um, but we need those two. We genuinely do. Um, I really hope, when we make the playoffs, because we will, that we don't face Phoenix in the first round again. honestly can't take it. I was like, oh, any other, I bit, on the flip side of that, it's like, well, what if we get like Denver in the next round? And, if Memphis has Steven Adams back, and seeing Zoo that matchup, or, is that what we want in the first round as well? We don't know what Dallas is going to bring to the table. They got better. We remember those playoff games against Dallas and how exhausting that was and how that, really beat up on our soul. So I know that we're going to the playoffs. We just really need to stay healthy. I would love, love, love for the Clippers to be able to hang, that championship banner when they open the Intuit Dome. And that's all we can hope for. But I'm going in no expectations. I really want it to be a fun season. I think last season, like I said, it was people, they say that was their least favorite season and like all their years being a Clippers fans, and that includes their losing seasons. So I just want them to go out there, have fun, give it their all. I'm really hoping that, Russ helps bring that energy to other people on the team, and let's just make it a fun season. And you asked about the schedule. Oh man, it's a brutal one. So many back to backs. They know what they're doing. I'm glad other people in the media have called the NBA out for having just really the worst schedule one could hope for. And it's really going to be one, I think, in the history books. Our last season in downtown LA. I think that's going to be something. I think it's going to be a full house. I think our final game is against Houston. It's around like Easter Sunday. So it's gonna, I think that's gonna be a moment. Hopefully, it's gonna be like that last game before you go into the playoffs and not in the play-in tournament. I don't think we deserve that stress. I really don't.
You think going into this season, our team is better than last year?
That's a really good question. I'm gonna have to go with yes, because guess like we do have a backup center.
Right.
We do have
I
a backup
agree.
center. I always think back, I'm like, oh, I really miss Luke Kennard, but you know what? It's okay. I think we're gonna, figure it out at the shooting guard position. And we did add again some younger pieces to the team, which is exciting. I think Bones Highland, I mean, seeing his former team win the championship, it's going to be interesting. I think he's going to be hungrier for it this season. And I'm really going to be curious as to how Ty Lue is going to balance, hopefully not injuries, but we have to be realistic here. I'm going to be curious as to how the coaching is going to go and how the rotations are going to be this incoming season. So I do believe we are better. We're slightly younger, if I'm not mistaken, and we'll see how it goes.
And, one thing you didn't even mention is the Westbrook, having him from the beginning of the season. I think that you
Absolutely.
mentioned it earlier, but this is going to be great, in my opinion, for us. And then my last question as it pertains to the team is not counting Westbrook, Kawhi, and Paul George, who's a player that you want to see either a lot more minutes from this season, or you just have a feeling they're going to do better than people expect and are going to be a bigger part of the team than anyone is kind of accounting for?
I got to go with Terrence Mann. I mean, we see he's
Okay.
already in Hawaii. I really think there's a reason they did not want to include him in any trade packages. I think he is the future of this franchise. And I know people say, like, oh, he's not, 23, 24. That's okay. I think he's I would love to see him in more lineups. I think, Amir Coffey, hopefully if they, work things out, I'd love to see more of him. I'm curious as to see, how if Kobe Brown really is ready. Oh my gosh, and my guy Brandon Boston would
Yeah,
really
I was,
like
I
to
was
see
wondering if
more
he
of
was
him.
going to get a mention.
Yeah, of course him. I was fortunate enough to, talk to him a little bit at a Miami game last season, and he was just so kind, and it really seemed like he wanted more minutes. I mean, he unfortunately had that injury, but again, the season before, he had those moments where he really shined, and I think he's ready for the moment. And I really hope Ty Lue gives him those opportunities. What
Any
about
season.
you?
Yeah. Oh, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
the thing is with Brandon is I obviously have been advocating for him to get in the rotation this season, but
Mhm.
when I really look at the amount of players that we have, I just think it's going to take a load management game or injuries for him to really play because we
Yeah.
have 10, 11 guys. Like, is he even above Amir Coffey in the pecking order? Like,
To
he
be
hasn't been in the
determined,
past.
right? Hmm.
Right. But you had any seeding prediction? I'm starting to be asked on shows at this point of the season or at this point of the off season, and people are asking me, do I have a seeding prediction? And I think this is the Clippers might be the toughest team in the entire NBA to predict their seed
Yeah.
because And that's not just for Clipper fans. I think that's for everyone that's doing predictions before the season, because it's like we could be a top 3 seed if Kawhi Leonard and
Absolutely.
Paul George play 60 plus games, but there's that huge risk, maybe more than any other team. I guess I would say the New Orleans Pelicans fans are like, maybe besides us, the ones that are really worrying the same way. But I mean, if Paul George misses like 30, 40 games, like we're back in playing conversation. So like,
Yeah.
where would you put? I tentatively, actually, you know what? I can't give the Locked On listeners too much. I got to do a prediction show at some point.
Oh,
So I can't give you guys too
okay.
much, but we'll get Kelly's prediction, tentative one.
Well, we know that Paul George on the, Stephen A. Smith show, he essentially, in his Charles Barkley accent, which he's phenomenal at it,
So good.
yeah, very good. I was like, maybe there's some acting in his future. Basically said like the number 2 seed. Everyone's like Denver. Everyone's worried about Denver. I'm like, hey, like there's a lot of other teams we got to worry about. We got to worry about Golden State, Memphis. We don't know what Sacramento's going to bring. We saw how close they got last season, and those are a bunch of young guys. They're only going to get better. So I stay away from predictions, but if I could have it, I would say like 4th or 5th seed. I think that's a good spot to be in. Because then we don't have to worry about those, play-in teams. Like I
Right.
really, New Orleans, I don't think we want to deal with that for some reason. We just, if
Yeah.
Zion is fully healthy next season, and that's a team we've been really struggling to beat, I hope we don't have to see them in the playoffs next season.
Yeah, or hopefully we can get over our Pelican demons at this point. I mean, this
Yeah.
season, hopefully we can get some wins against them. My last question before we get off is, what was your favorite moment of covering the team this past year?
I would have to say, you know what? That's a really good question because initially I was like, oh, the playoffs for sure. But I really did enjoy Media Day. I really enjoyed just how excited everybody seemed and the enthusiasm. And I would like to see more of that carried, not just on Media Day, but carried out throughout the season. And I know, I talk about enthusiasm and spirit and things like that. And I know when you're injured, there's nothing you can do about it. You literally can't go on the court. Like I could only imagine how that feels. I truly empathize with that. But again, the Russ Brook effect and the energy that he's going to continue to bring to the team. So yeah, my highlight of last season, but still the playoffs, honestly, just, being back there, asking the questions, even that final game when we were eliminated, being able to ask, just being there, seeing how they felt. Sometimes I think you almost need to see, like, were they affected by this? Are they sad? Did they care? And they definitely did. And so I think they obviously remember that, and they're going to come into the season remembering how that felt and making sure that they don't have to experience those emotions again.
Yeah, Ty Lue, Lawrence Frank, and Paul George have all said they want to take the regular season more seriously going into the year. That's something I've been
Mhm.
preaching on this show and my own for the better part of a year. So hopefully we see the Clippers get off to a strong start. I don't know if you've looked at those first 4 games, but they're very winnable, starting with our
Oh yeah.
opener against Portland. You gonna be there?
I am gonna be there, absolutely, and,
Woo!
I dabble, sometimes when there's a member of the media, but it's so fun to go as a fan and just, be yeah, so, yeah, absolutely, I'll be there, so I'm sure I'll see you there.
Yep. Let everybody know where they can find you though, to see all the work that you're putting in and consistently putting out, whether it's basketball related or non-basketball related.
So mostly right now I'm taking a little bit of a social media hiatus. I'm just, waiting for hopefully it won't be a stressful season, but I'm kind of laying off social media until the season starts and I can start tweeting a little bit more. But you can find me on Twitter at Kelli Johnson TV. And once I do have my Instagram back, it'll be my name, Kelli Johnson. So that's where you can find me.
There we go. Did you wear hoops because it was a hoops podcast?
It goes with the braids. I've really started to love them, and I think it's part of my look. But yes,
Love
yes, I got to give you. Yeah, I did.
it. Yeah. Well, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dime Dropper Pod. Let me know what you guys thought of the episode, and let me know in the pinned comment on YouTube. And you got to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell for all things LA Clippers. But let us know in the pinned comment, what is the Clipper culture to you? And when I say that, I mean obviously going forward. No Donald Sterling culture talk. But the age-old proverb continues: Go Clippers.